400,000 people gathered to demand peace. But then, the skies turned black. Was it just a storm? Or did the US government weaponize the weather to shut them up?
The Folk Rock Music Festival, which brought 350,000 people.
And it is true, their music is loud, and they dress weirdly and smoke pot.
Woodstock was supposed to be the biggest peace gathering in history. 500,000 people ready to protest war with nothing but music and love. But then, without warning, the skies opened up. Torrential rain soaked everything. Mud swallowed the crowd. Planes circled overhead, releasing strange smoke into the clouds. Some say it was just bad weather. Others say it was the US government trying to silence a movement without firing a single bullet. It was August 1969, and over 400,000 people flooded into upstate New York. They weren't just there for the music. They were there to rebel, to make a statement, to stand against war. They came to protest Vietnam, challenge the system, and send a message that couldn't be ignored. But someone was listening. As crowds danced and sang, strange things appeared in the sky. Low-flying planes released trails of smoke directly into darkening clouds. Within minutes, the storm hit. Not just a drizzle, but a violent, relentless downpour that turned fields into mud pits. People slipped, tents collapsed, and the festival's energy fell apart. Some attendees left early. Others got hurt. The chaos drowned out the message. But the weirdest part? Festival goers saw the planes and knew something was off. "They're seeding the clouds," one man told a reporter. At the time, no one believed him. Weather control? That sounded insane. But now we know the truth. The US government was experimenting with weather manipulation since the 1940s, and not in secret. So the question is, if they had that power back then, why wouldn't they use it, especially against something they feared? The idea of controlling the weather sounds like science fiction, but it's been science fact for nearly a century. In 1947, a US government project called Project Cirrus flew directly into a tropical storm with crushed dry ice. They dropped it into the storm's eye, hoping to weaken it. Instead, the storm turned into a hurricane, then made a sharp, unnatural turn toward the US mainland. It slammed into Georgia and Florida, causing millions in damage. The public was furious. The government denied responsibility. But a Nobel Prize-winning chemist later admitted the storm had definitely been manipulated. He said human hands had changed its course. General Electric, which funded the project, immediately pulled out. They feared lawsuits, and worse. That's when weather control got quiet. But it didn't stop. 15 years later, in 1962, the US launched Project Stormfury. This time they used silver iodide, a chemical that could force clouds to release rain or snow. They didn't just study it, they used it. Dozens of tests were done on real hurricanes in the open ocean. The goal? Make storms less deadly. But many of them got stronger. People started asking questions. Was the government trying to help or harness the storm? And while all this was happening, another operation was brewing. One that would take weather control from the lab to the battlefield. It was called Operation Popeye, and it didn't target hurricanes, it targeted people. But before we get to that, there's something strange about Woodstock we still haven't explained. Woodstock wasn't just a concert, it was a declaration. 500,000 people came together in protest, against war, against authority, and against the system itself. To the US government, it wasn't music, it was momentum. And momentum, when left unchecked, becomes a threat. Now imagine being in power, watching a generation gather with unity, rage, and purpose, all in one place. You can't send in soldiers, that would make martyrs. But a storm? That's just bad weather. On the ground, the skies were clear. The sun was shining. Then suddenly, clouds rolled in thick and fast. Witnesses remember seeing strange planes flying overhead. Low, slow, releasing long trails of smoke directly into the clouds. Some called it cloud seeding, others called it paranoia. But one man shouted it plainly. Why are the fascists seeding the clouds? To understand how strange that sounds, you need to realize something. It wasn't crazy, not even close. The government had already been experimenting with weather manipulation for decades. In 1947, Project Cirrus tried to steer a hurricane with dry ice. It backfired. The storm turned and slammed into Georgia, millions in damage. But instead of giving up, they doubled down. By 1962, they launched Project Stormfury. This time, they used silver iodide, a chemical that could force clouds to dump rain. They tested it on hurricanes right out in the open. Sometimes it worked. Other times, the storms grew worse. No one could explain why. Then came Vietnam. The US military couldn't bomb the Ho Chi Minh Trail into nothing, so they flooded it instead. From 1967 to 1972, Operation Popeye carried out more than 2,600 cloud seeding missions. They turned dirt roads into swamps and made monsoons last 45 extra days. They called it non-lethal warfare. But it killed crops, collapsed bridges, and drowned supply lines, so the question becomes, if they used weather as a weapon overseas, what's stopping them from using it at home? Woodstock wasn't just peace and love, it was defiance. It was broadcast worldwide. A perfect storm for a perfect storm. And just like that, the skies opened. Not a drizzle, not a shower. A relentless downpour that soaked the stage and broke the spirit. A movement washed away in mud, while the skies stayed quiet about who caused it. Cloud seeding isn't science fiction, it's real. It's been tested, funded, and deployed by governments across the world. And once you understand how it works, you start seeing patterns in every so-called natural disaster. The idea is simple. You take a storm cloud that's holding moisture and inject it with particles like silver iodide or dry ice. These particles act like a magnet, forcing water droplets to clump together and fall. Rain, snow, even hail can be created on command. In Vietnam, this was turned into a weapon. The US Air Force used it to destroy roads and drown out enemy supply chains. It wasn't a theory. It wasn't a test. It was a full-scale military operation, Operation Popeye. And it lasted 5 years. So, if the US could flood entire regions during war, who's to say they couldn't disrupt a music festival back home? A festival full of anti-war activists, political energy, and national media coverage. But here's the twist. America wasn't the only one playing with the weather. In China, weather modification is part of national policy. During the 2008 Olympics, Beijing used planes, rockets, and even artillery to blast chemicals into the sky. Their goal? Force the rain to fall before it reached the capital. And it worked. Blue skies greeted the world as the opening ceremony unfolded. But nearby villages, they got soaked. Meanwhile, in the United Arab Emirates, a desert country with almost no natural rain, cloud seeding is done on a massive scale. They conduct hundreds of flights per year, targeting any cloud with potential. In 2019, it backfired. Record floods drowned neighborhoods and turned highways into rivers. The government admitted their seeding efforts may have gone too far. Then in 2024, it happened again. This time, they denied it. But people noticed the same patterns. Even Saudi Arabia, one of the hottest and driest places on Earth, saw snow for the first time in recorded history. Just months after expanding their own cloud seeding program. When you see patterns like this, rain where it shouldn't fall, snow in places that never freeze, you start to wonder how much of our weather is real and how much is engineered. If the technology to make it rain, flood, or snow already exists, who decides when it's used? Who decides where? And more importantly, who's watching to make sure it doesn't go too far? If the government could seed clouds in Vietnam, why not over New York? Woodstock was loud, messy, and powerful, and just one well-timed storm was all it took to muddy the message. It wasn't a crackdown, it was nature. At least that's what they wanted you to believe. But nature doesn't fly planes in circles above peaceful protests. Nature doesn't drop chemical smoke into clear skies. And if weather is a weapon, who decides when and where to use it? If the rain at Woodstock was manufactured, what else has been? Floods, fires, hurricanes, droughts. Are they all just disasters or something deeper? Because the scariest part isn't that weather control is possible, it's that it's been happening for decades, and no one told us.